This is
Make It Plain.
Make It Plain.
MIP.
With Masamela Matfumo.
Mark Thompson.
Make It Plain.
Get woke.
God bless you. Good morning. Get woke. Ladies and gentlemen, MIP is COVID-free. Free meaning you don't need a subscription to hear MIP every day now for a limited time. While we endure this pandemic, we want to make it available to everyone. So wherever you get your podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, Pandora, MIP is COVID-free and available to you and everyone without a subscription. Ladies and gentlemen, there is a state in the union which gives some of us a level of concern and anxiety, some of us even PTSD from 4 years ago, to be honest. But we remain ever hopeful and optimistic, and there's someone here to help us do that. I'm talking about the great state of Wisconsin, and I'm talking about a representative who represents the 11th district in Wisconsin. Representative Jason Fields joins us now, and we welcome Jason Fields to Make It Plain. My brother, how are you, man?
I'm good, Reverend. How are you, man? I was telling you earlier, I'm so used to seeing, that wisdom, that face on TV and news. So I knew this was the place we had to be.
Yeah, well, brother, I thank you for being here, and it's an honor to have you, and I respect you and your work and your activism, and you're representing the people as well. First of all, you, your family, your loved ones, is everyone safe? You all been surviving this pandemic?
Thank you. Yeah, everybody's fine. It is, I'll be honest with you, it is what we're seeing in Wisconsin, and this is some of the stuff that we'll be talking about when we talk about being on pins and needles in Wisconsin. When this pandemic first hit African Americans, Milwaukee, where I represent all the urban areas, we were hit the hardest. On the flip side of that coin, you had the other side going, well, we don't want the mask. We don't want to do all this stuff. Now that it's flip-flopped, now it's a pandemic. Now it's a concern that, in areas where we represent is going down because we're all taking precautions. But now what we find is hospitals are running out of space, 80% capacity. They had to open up other areas in the urban areas to transport patients from those areas where people didn't believe they should be wearing masks. So it is, God has a crazy sense of irony. He gonna wake you up one way or the other.
So now, those are the areas where people were not wearing masks. Early on, I know Milwaukee was hit kind of hard. Has it subsided some in Milwaukee?
It has subsided. It's tapered off. Even though Wisconsin as a whole, Doc, we probably in the top 3 as far as red hotspots, and a lot of the urban areas we've gotten a hold of it because more people are exercising caution. But what we're seeing is a spike in the outside urban areas, and so we're not out of the woods yet, but more people are, particularly in the urban areas, because of deaths. Milwaukee is a small sort of, city. So, a lot of people. And so when we've had those deaths, it opened a lot of eyes for us here because we all knew people personally who passed away. And so in my community, we said, listen, let's do what we can. And so you see the spike in outside areas.
Yeah. So obviously, people need to vote by mail.
Yep.
Y'all built for that? How's that going?
we are fighting. Like always, we are fighting. I think if you notice, a lot of places had stadiums that opened up.
Right.
We were looking to get the Bucks Arena, maybe the Brewer Stadium, which would make sense. But, that was sort of between the Republicans challenged that, and the city of Milwaukee was saying, well, we don't know if we want to do that now. So I'll tell you this. Yes, I'll tell you, it has literally, as an African-American man, as a Black man, it's hard not to feel like, we're fighting just to vote, on either side for Joe Biden, and that said, we're still fighting and making sure that in this pandemic, this is now the time to exercise caution. So we're fighting now. The Supreme Court just ruled, we could do early voting or extension of early voting. Republicans, it was a ruling that overruled that, saying now we can't do it. So the games are being played day and night, every day, all day. Every day they're suing somebody for trying to suppress the vote. And so right now we're fighting, we're looking good, but I'm optimistic, man, that at this point in time, Black folks have had enough. We get to a point where we're tired of being sick and tired. And what you see now is we had over 600,000 absentee ballots requested. And so a lot of folks are taking this serious. I'm not going to say we over the hump, but I can tell you this. I'm more excited about where we're coming because it seems like we understand that this is the moment now for us to put somebody who's going to at least hear us and do some of the things we know need to be done in our community.
How many absentee ballots did you say?
Over 600,000. So over 600,000 ballots requested. And right now we're in between October 15th, which starts today, and then October, I want to say 20th or 30th, we're in that period where now you can begin to go to your municipal clerk and start voting early, start registering. And so we're making a big push to get people to the polls, get to the campaigns, so that we don't have the same problems we had in April earlier, where the city of Milwaukee went from 180 voting locations to 5. 180 voting locations to 5 in the middle of a pandemic. And what we found, and I'm going to say this, brother, because I love you, love the show. There was, in my personal belief, you had a mayor's race where he was running against an African American, and you also have the Republicans saying we want to suppress the vote. Well, he benefited from that closure in those polls. So 50% of African American voters were disenfranchised because we went from 180 voting locations to just 5 in a city with a population of 500,000. Yeah, brother. Yeah, brother.
Wait a minute now. So what happens November 3rd? How many voting locations will there be?
We will have more. We will have more than that. And that's one of the things that we're fighting about now. Can we get more due to COVID? So we have a group of people where we're recruiting a lot of our business folks to say, listen, if we want to do this right, we need to have a space that's accessible for people who are handicapped. That's why we were urging the Milwaukee Bucks Arena, the Brewers Stadium, as a location. And so that's a battle we're having right now. Whatever the case, I believe we'll be successful, but we will not allow just 5 locations anymore. We already have more than that. The question now is, can we get more and bigger spaces?
Are the Bucks and the Brewers stadiums off the table now?
The Bucks we're battling about it. I'm not going to say they're completely off the table, because again, what my sources and the people I know are talking to the mayor and saying, listen, this will be detrimental because we've been through this process already, and we're not going to settle for this anymore. We want Joe Biden in as a community, and for us, it's now we're fighting to make sure every vote, every ballot is counted. Because one of the court cases we were talking about was, will we be able to have ballots come in as long as they're postmarked by November 3rd? So we're trying to make sure every angle is covered to make sure Joe Biden wins. Yeah.
Well, again, speaking of those stadiums, and I was involved in a small role in talking to some of these stadiums in these cities, and Atlanta signed on.
Yep.
Even the Dodgers.
Yep.
But I mean, California is not as much of a battleground as Wisconsin. We need them Jones.
Right.
I mean, if I had to choose between the Brewers and the Bucks versus Dodger Stadium, because I know what I'm going to get in Dodger Stadium. It's still safer for people to be spread out.
That's right.
But I need the difference that Wisconsin's going to make up. And again, that's why we got PTSD, because they tricked us with your state 4 years ago.
Yes. There was a lot of, I'll say this, and you and I've talked about this. Not only did we fall for the okie doke, we even participated in it by not being aggressive. I will acknowledge that the Clinton campaign, she should have came to Wisconsin more. I think we all know that. But they did trick us. And right now, and I love your phrase, PTSD, we're not trying to have that anymore. I mean, you really have a group of people on the ground. And I love the fact that the youth, this young group, are really pushing social justice, economic justice, fighting against police brutality. And this is where the margin is being made up. We have great young activists on the ground, brother, who are not taking no holds barred. They're not falling for this anymore. Right. And so we in the elected officials realm, we're meeting them with focusing on the census and trying to make sure that's done, even though they just ruled that they wanted to stop it. And so we're constantly fighting all these battles. But again, I think that's when we as a people, that's when we do our best, man. When our back is up against the wall and when we feel like something is getting taken away from us, we will come out and do it out of spite just because we feel like it. And I'm going to say this, when we see these stories of the Kanyes, the Ice Cubes, all these people who somehow have just thrown us for a major loop, then we start to question the sincerity and who's really at the helm running a lot of this stuff. And we know it's not people who care about us. And so that's when we come out and give our best.
Well, folks, Representative Fields and I were talking about Kanye and all the latest. We won't get back into everything because probably best that most of that was offline.
Yeah.
But it's something about your state, man. They like to do the trick there.
Yes, they do.
So what happened? Some folk tried to get Kanye on the ballot.
On the ballot. They came in, tried to get Kanye on the ballot. What they broke the law because what they were doing was signing people's name in order to get on the ballot fraudulently. And it's just. And here's where, not to be conspiracy theorists, but let's be honest, we all know who that would have benefited, and so, thank God we saw it, we caught it. Our election commission we had people come out, say, look, I didn't sign this. I didn't put my name on this. And you had a lot of those kind of incidences enough where he didn't get put on the ballot. And when you look at from the closures to, trying to suppress the vote, trying to close the polling locations. Mm-hmm. Every day, brother, they are throwing some kind of trickery, some kind of strategy at us. Now the strategy, confusion. Get enough people confused where they just throw their hands up and go, you know what, this is so much garbage. I'm not going to fall for it.
Right.
Have to continue to move against that because, again, even those of us in Wisconsin realize, listen, we screwed this up in 2016. We're not going to do this again. And so now I think we're all on alert, and every time we see these bots, the algorithms, the trickery, we're trying to call it and cut it off at the knees before it gets started, man.
Well, and of course, we also were talking earlier about disinformation targeting Black men.
Yes.
So what's happening in Milwaukee and Wisconsin in terms of Black men? Have you all been able to keep Black men informed and engaged and let them know that not voting is not an option?
Yeah, we have I do a number of marketing things from social media. We have a number of activists on the ground, whether it be Ray Nitty, who walked from, Milwaukee to DC. A lot of our activists are coming out and taking a stance going, and these are African-American brothers, people who have good credibility on the streets from the boardroom, and all of us are on one page championing the same thing, that if we don't have a seat at the table, we probably on the menu. If we don't get out and vote, you can't keep here saying, well, I don't like either choices. Right. One choice is better than the other. Let's get that clear. One choice is way better than the other. And so when we consistently we're getting into groups where we're talking about the future of Milwaukee and where we go. More needs to be done. Our Black Caucus, we're consistently putting out messages, trying to make sure everybody is understanding the rules of engagement. I just put something out there to a bunch of brothers and folks saying, we're not out of the woods. There is a possible way for the current person in office to still win. And so we have to be leery and weary of all these strategies and techniques, and we have to stand diligent. I'll say this, man, Black men, we are going through so much, brother. I mean, we are going through so much, from the police brutality, police injustices, that leaning on Black women to hold us up, is just as important, has been just as important. And making sure that we have right now, Rev, we even have a police chief opening, Black candidates there. We're vying for Black men. And so this is a time where we're trying to come together to get a seat at the table and change the narrative.
Right. Everybody heard what he said. Black police chief opening, looking at Black men, and I presume some Black women too. See, when they ran the disinformation on Kamala, y'all.
Oh.
See, watch this. I want y'all to go back and y'all figure this out on your own, y'all listeners now. Some of the same people complaining about Joe Biden and we not voting wouldn't support the Black woman. And why? Because Steve Bannon and some other people put this narrative out there.
That's right.
That any Black person who was a prosecutor was no good.
Yeah.
Now, did you hear what the representative just said? Let's put our thinking caps on. When did we decide we didn't need people to look like us in law enforcement? You damn right. Milwaukee needs a Black police chief. So what we gonna say? Oh, anybody, we don't want no Black police chief. And we just gonna let that go.
Right.
So we can remain in the situation we in? I mean, unless y'all gonna abolish the police. I don't think y'all about to abolish the police yet, are you? I know some people want to do that, but we ain't there yet.
And that's the strategy where that's the strategy where we have to understand this is chess. This is not checkers. We can't complain when we have the opportunity to put people like us, who not just because they Black, qualified, smart, intelligent, and know what they're doing. We can't pass that opportunity up and then complain on the back end saying, well, they gave us this. No, Kamala was in the presidential campaign race.
Right.
She was on stage.
Right.
We had an opportunity to vote for her there.
That's right.
So we can't complain because, quite honestly, maybe a lot of us didn't go that route, or we fell victim to the okie doke and believed that message, that narrative that got put out there.
Yeah. But folks, when you think about what Representative Fields just said, just naturally in the position he's in a city like Milwaukee, they have a police department.
Yep.
They have openings. You got to have someone who looks like the community they serve.
That's right.
I mean, that's just, I hope people are clear on that. I hope we don't continue to fall for that okie doke. That's very, very, very important. And good luck with that. I hope that can work out in the way it's supposed to. Now, speaking of the police, some of my friends, Tamika Mallory and others, are descending in the area because of Joseph Mensah and the shooting of Alvin Cole. Where is that?
Those are two of many, which is sad to report. A good friend of mine, was hit by a sheriff who wasn't looking on killed him. And we are, and Rev, he's been guilty of this before, but still on the police force. So we are fighting consistently for equitable treatment, not special treatment, equitable treatment. And the danger, and I'll say this with these situations, particularly with a Mensa, I'd be remiss if I didn't say there was a concern when you have an African-American officer in a predominantly white city, 3 shootings over the last 5 years, all fatalities, and he's a Black man. Because on one hand, it gives a sense of we can get away with this kind of stuff if it's him. I'm not going to speak to his character. I don't know him, but I'm gravely concerned when we see the penalties that are handed down from our judicial system totally ignore what this community deserves. Sentencing, firing. And we consistently deal with this on these levels. And so, yeah, we have, and let's be clear, we can protest all day, and we should. But you and I both know until you start getting people in positions of power, until you can start, for all intents and purposes, get more elected officials across the state who can change these laws and these narratives and these processes, that's where the battle starts. I love what my protesters are doing. I love it. I've always said, after that, then what? Because if we haven't came away with somebody in power to help us change these things, if we haven't changed the laws or the processes, we'll be protesting again. Right. And so that's where the fight has to really take place. And I think, you know that. This is about power and who's wielding it. And if you're not with us, you're against us. And some people have to go. We have to get tired of being sick and tired where we call for our other police chief who was a Latino. He wasn't good with the community. He wasn't good with the community. Mm-hmm. And until you get people in those positions, brother, that's where the main battle starts.
Well, and even the right kind of Black folk.
That's right.
So I give an example. So one of my mentors, I went to Georgetown. I worked for the basketball team. One of my mentors was Coach Thompson, whom we just recently lost.
Yeah.
He called me from the hospital not long before he passed away, because we talk politics. We remained close ever since I left school. He said, Mark, all this, to your point, Representative Fields, all this protesting, Mark, I'm watching on TV, is that really going to make the difference? And I said, Coach, well, it's a good question. I mean, it's important. I said, but if we can't get people to not just do this for a moment.
That's right.
But also to vote. Because people talk about not voting. They're not just talking about the president. They say, we're just not going to vote. So if you don't vote, you don't elect a Representative Fields to make sure your Rusty Dusties have a Black police chief.
Right.
If you don't vote, then you continue to have a Daniel Cameron in office in Louisville who looks like us, but clearly ain't one of us.
No.
So, I mean, at a moment of Black Lives Matter and this police demic, for people to be saying don't vote, that's cognitive dissonance. And them folk are either working for somebody else or they're bots. And Coach and I talked about that.
Yeah.
And then, as you know, there's voting. That's one day every 2 years. But them other 365 days or 2 years in between, it's about meetings. It's about accountability.
That's right.
It's about the pressure. When I was leading the DC Police Task Force in Washington, D.C., we got everything we wanted, Representative Fields, because of the fear of us protesting. Mm-hmm. They knew we could. So we sit in the room with the chief of police, say, hey, we want A, B, C, D, E, F, G. And it helped, too, that Marion was still the mayor. But but we want A, B, C, D, E, F, G. Okay, well, we'll give you this. Because they didn't want us to get in the streets. So the real purpose of protests is to have something to negotiate with in the suite.
That's right.
So you don't go out you have to go out in the street.
That's right.
And then everybody's good. So you're absolutely right, folks. That's why we have to vote.
That's right.
Okay. And that's why we have to hold them accountable. You can never, people think they can just do one thing and then just fall back.
Yeah.
And just take care of itself.
And that's the danger of this. And I was meeting with one of the leaders and I was telling him, there has to be a strategy from the infrastructure that you put in place to then, yes, the protest of the vehicle, it's a great part. It's one piece of the strategy. As you pointed out, Rev, you still need to be in the room to do the negotiating. You still need to know, well, what's going to happen. And I'm talking about policies and practices that will actually effectuate change.
Mm-hmm.
The concern will be we do this and then, it's for the moment, right? It's hype, everybody's doing it. But then after a while, it dies down. And so it becomes if you have a game plan, what's the game plan? Don't use the protesting just to protest. Use the protesting to effectuate change and partner with people and give, like you guys did, give them something. Here's the list. Here are the things we want to get changed. If you don't do that, then you, in essence, nobody has to worry about you. You know what I mean? If I know you're going to die off or you're going to calm down, I can just wait you out. So there has to be a game plan and strategy. And we're getting that. We have that particularly on, the things that we want to see change, starting with who's in power. And if this person is in power, these are the expectations that we want to have. We don't want to see 50 to 60, 70% of the city budget going to law enforcement. Nothing wrong with law enforcement. We need them. Cool. I'm with you on that. But at this point in time, we need to start focusing on the front end of these items, the front end of these issues, to prevent people from being in a situation where law enforcement is called anyway.
In the first
they
place.
need training for mental health issues. How do you recognize it? And quite honestly, we got to talk about the historical perspective of why law enforcement was created and how some of that has continued to this day.
Yeah.
And if you do not want to talk about that, you need to go, because we've seen too many instances. I saw yesterday, a couple of days ago, there was a story where, in Kenosha, we had the shooting, the Blake shooting, where he was shot in the back. He had a knife apparently in the back of his truck. A couple of days ago, I just saw a news report where a young white man was laying on the ground, stabbed a police officer in the neck, got up, started running. They tased this person. You can't, and we see too many stories like that. Right. Something is wrong where we're seeing those kinds of stories consistently. We have to talk about those things. And that starts with who's in power and will you change the narrative?
Absolutely. And then, you got Rittenhouse being treated differently.
Oh,
if he had been black,
they gave him water
with nothing. Huh?
I watched the video. The boy walked down the street, went up to police cars. Had that been me, we would have been dead.
Oh yeah,
we wouldn't even made it that far.
Yeah, they shoot us for even thinking about doing something like that, let alone actually doing it.
Right.
And that's the thing. But folks, here's the other point, and just one more thing I'll say on that, and I'm sure you agree. I always remind people too, and we were talking about this in the context of Ice Cube and folks clout chasing. Being in Milwaukee, doing the work you're doing, working with the community, holding the police accountable, that doesn't get your name in lights.
No.
Everybody wants to be national leader, Representative Fields. But I remind people that Dr. King wasn't really national leader.
Right.
He was in Montgomery. And then he went to Birmingham.
Yeah.
And then he went to Selma and other cities. It wasn't, didn't nobody sit down and have a meeting? Hey, let's figure out how we could be national leaders. And then the only leadership and following you have is on social media.
Right.
So again, it's not just voting, but having the discipline of doing the unsexy, unglamorous work.
That's right.
In your local community.
That's right.
In the cracks and crevices.
That's right.
Of cities like Milwaukee and Louisville, where there ain't no cameras.
That's right.
Hammering that stuff out. And see, folks, that's why not only do we need to do this work, but you got to elect brothers like Jason Fields and keep them in office. I mean, put it this way, Jason Fields is a bright young man. He has a bright future. Jason Fields can probably run for Congress or senator one day. But we will still need Jason Fieldses in the state and local positions. I know people want to be big, but then when Jason Fields goes up, we need another Jason Fields to keep that moving on the local piece.
That's right.
Because watch this census that they jammed up.
Yes, they did.
See, Jason Fields is in a position to figure out, well, wait a minute, we know we undercounted.
Right.
How do we do the redistricting? How do we get the resources to the place that undercounted? That doesn't happen by itself.
You know, and Mark, I want to point, and I'm glad you brought that up because it goes into the trickery that you said. Whenever we start getting ahead, like first we were all doing the promoting. Everybody, you got to do your census, got to go out and do your census. And then when they hear, well, they cut the census out, in our minds, unfortunately, we sometimes give them a victory and we get, bummed out, bewildered, down as if we lost. No, we keep fighting. They want you to feel that way.
That's right.
So that's why we have to continue to overcome and fight those. And I couldn't agree with you more, as I champion a lot of equity capital, getting minority businesses access to capital. Mm-hmm. And I'm leaving the legislature, but what I did, we have in our community, we need to make sure there's a pipeline. So the young lady who's coming up to me, a mentee, state representative, she'll be elected, degree from Marquette University, African-American woman, temperament to, and this is what I said, not clout chase, not clap chasing. Because you and I both know the real work that's done, it ain't on the camera. You don't even know. In fact, half the time the stuff you see on the camera is after everything been worked out.
That's right.
So those are the kinds of talent and temperament and strategies we need to be aware of. I don't rush to the camera because that ain't where the real work done. The real work is done behind the scenes, and we need more people who, like you said, I'm not trying to be famous. I'm trying to get stuff done for my community. Yeah.
But I still say to people, Dr. King became famous being local.
Yeah.
I mean, that was still the blessing that came from that. So, folks, this is all very important. So I want to go back. So 600,000 absentee ballots, that's requested, that's statewide.
Yeah.
Correct.
That's up until today. My numbers, one of my political people just sent me the numbers and they said 600,000, I think was requested.
And that'll probably go up. Yep. Are you feeling confident if everything falls into place the way it should? And I know you all are still negotiating polling places.
I'll say this. I'm confident, I'm optimistic because my faith leads me to be that way.
Okay.
But I am working with a sense of urgency.
Okay.
There is you don't give up until November 4th. You know what I mean? Like, we don't stop. And who knows, this thing may go past November 3rd, And so right now, I'm optimistic because of the work we're doing, but I don't concede, nor do I take that for granted because, listen, I got to talk to you, to go back to your reference about Black men. I have good friends, some who've been in the political game, who said, does voting really work? Does it really matter?
Mm.
And I'm like, man, you've been in this, And so if you, who are a veteran in this arena, are starting to put that narrative out there, then, that shows me something.
Mm.
And so I'm not taking it for granted that we still have to convince folks that it matters. I know who they would vote for. Hell, I just got to get you to the poll. I just got to get you to get active.
Right.
And consistently, when in the state of Wisconsin, I'll tell you now, there's one of one of the things is we're dealing with voter fatigue, right? And you see that in a lot of the rural areas where people who voted for the current president are now sick and tired. They're sick and tired of just the thing that he's been exposed. Now, I don't know where the hell these people been, Rev. I mean, you and I have seen this. How many times, if a person shows you who they really are, I think it was Maya Angelou, believe him, he showed us a long time ago. But for whatever reason, some people are just now getting to the point where, okay, now we see him for who he really is, and now they're tired. And usually when people get that tired, that's when the change comes. And so those same people that went from Obama to Trump, I think are going to come back to Biden-Harris.
Yeah. I hope so, because this is a pivotal moment. Wisconsin is key.
Yeah.
I'm wishing you all the best in terms of the polling locations and people being able. That's just scientifically urgent. Y'all got to get that done. Yeah. Thankful to you, brother, for all you've been doing and for standing up and giving that guidance and direction. We got to get beyond this conversation. Does voting really matter? Well, honestly, sometimes it hasn't, because we've not had people represent us who gave a damn.
That's right.
But if we're going to have any hope, we just have to get back out there and vote for people who actually do give a damn and follow up. And I think you, Representative Fields, are an example. Thank you. You're serving your community. And we need to lift up more African-American elected officials like yourself who are doing that work and are still visible in the community and trying to make that difference. Folks, if you have loved ones in Wisconsin, particularly in Milwaukee, tell them to get out to vote. Don't let Representative Fields does not want his state for a second presidential cycle. Right. Okay. Right. Am I right?
You're right. We can't have it. I saw that movie already. I saw that movie.
Right. No, and they don't deserve that. And we don't want that to happen again. The convention was in Milwaukee for obvious reasons. Well, we couldn't have the convention. We were on our way there, brother. All of us, you would have seen me, but I promise you, but it's still, there was a presence and there was an acknowledgement of that city and that community, and that's critical. Representative Jason Fields, representing the 11th District in Milwaukee. Brother, let's stay in touch. You're a good soldier, brother.
Thank you, Rev.
Thank you for joining us here on Make It Plain.
God, you are our refuge. Send our ancestors to guard our doors. Cast out this virus from our communities and our bodies. Heal, bless, and protect everyone listening and their loved ones. Thank you for listening to Make It Plain and Get Woke. Remember to listen, like, and subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and wherever you get your podcasts. If all minds are clear, it has been made plain.
Be a barbecue hero with delicious, ultra-low net-carb Hero Bread, buns, and tortillas. Soft and fluffy, high in fiber, and with 0 grams of sugar, up to 10 grams of protein, coming in at under 100 calories per serving. Oh, and did I mention they taste like their mouth-watering traditional versions? I mean, what's not to love? Use code AH10 for 10% off your first Hero Bread purchase at hero.co. That's AH10 for 10% off at hero.co.